What is up, everybody? Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show. As always, I like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. Do note I am also the 2018 recipient of the Innovation Award handed out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. You're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. And let's get to the epic conversation right quick. It's a Wednesday night. Most Wednesday nights we have Black Lady Magic in the house, and this is Black Lady, part of Black Lady Magic, part of Sorors, part of Intellectual Thought, all these wonderful things in the house. So let's put it down. We've got Chetachi and Lia. What is going on, ladies?
Hello,
Good.
how are you?
Good.
Good. Having a good day?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Good. With or without Facebook?
Oh,
happy to be without it.
Yeah, that gave me an opportunity to just be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good stuff. And we like to shout out to Jada and Dre on the Get Vocal platform. Thanks for stopping by. And as always, you're more than happy to jump into the conversation. We're going to get into it right quick because we have a limited amount of time tonight. Usually we have a long stretch, but Encyclopedia Brown wants to cut out at the top of the hour. So we're going to have to make it quick. So here we go. And Jada's already saying, yes, love it. Beautiful Black queens. They are. So let's get, Andre says facts. All right. I love that. So this
is the NYC love.
There you go.
Yeah.
So we're chatting about how to end the color fight. And this came after last week's epic conversation. And there were a number of great topics or conversation pieces that came up from that. I've got a whole list of them because I listen. And when I thought about it, first I thought, okay, are we talking about color fight between melanated and non-melanated? But there's also a color fight within Black culture.
Mm-hmm.
So I think because the majority of people that are watching this are melanated, I thought, let's stick to our wheelhouse, so to speak. So when we talk about the color fight within the Black environment, what are your own opening comments? Who'd like to chat first?
Go ahead, Lia.
Okay, I was going to defer to you.
Oh, well, too late.
Okay. I mean, for me, it basically goes back to our slavery days when the power structure was set up so that we would never rise up as a people because they created divisions between us. And really the only way that they could do that was by creating colorism. So they would put, more melanated folks outside and less melanated folks inside, and sort of created this false hierarchy that unfortunately still has vestiges in society today. So, I mean, I remember in the 90s, and really even still today, but really a lot in the 90s, always the jokes of light skin versus dark skin. The joke of all the R&B crooners being light skinned, thinking like Chris Williams or Albie Shore. Everyone was trying to make that sort of like the standard for male attractiveness if you were a Black male. And that was sort of the aspirational look to have. And then everyone was always sort of making fun of Wesley Snipes' complexion, if you were talking about someone who's dark skinned, even though obviously he was also an icon and considered an attractive male as well. But I feel like a lot of that sort of kind of joking, kind of shooting the dozens really is based in something that is real and something that still exists. And today, I mean, even though I think it's becoming not quite as in our faces as it used to be in the past, it definitely still exists, at least in terms of how broader society interacts with Black people. I still think that there tends to be more of an acceptance for lighter skinned people, though don't get it twisted. We're still Black and we are seen as Black. But I still think there is this sort of self-imposed colorism that we continue to do. And I think that dark skinned women or darker women still kind of are mistreated and still sort of treated worse by society, not necessarily treated as beautiful, though they are. And I definitely think there's a lot more issues still that we carry as a community that while it is imposed from the outside, we impose it upon ourselves.
I defer to dear Tatiana.
I don't know what else you want me to say because she has summed everything up quite nicely. I 100% agree. Yes, yes, and yes. That colorism is a huge, huge mark on us, not just historically, but currently. And anybody who thinks it's not, all you have to do is look at media. Media is a perfect example of the preferences within our own. And I'm not necessarily talking, you could look at all media, but then when you look at media that really that is either written by Black people, etc., where we're involved some way, you just have to look. If you look at music videos, that's like the worst example. That gives you a stark example of how much colorism is still a force within Black communities, plural. If you look at how proud and the conversation that happened, the discourse that happened around Black Panther and the women in Black Panther, that was huge, because for the first time in a mainstream film, you had a mass of darker skinned people on screen. That never happens. So while it was a proud Black moment, it was also a proud moment for melanated people who happen to be of the darker hue, because in a way, it kind of validated your experience. But then the question is, and we'll leave that for later, it validates your experience here because they're supposed to be African. What about all the other stories? So I'll leave it there.
Before we go further, on the YouTube side, we have, of course, Divine Rights. Thank you so much for stopping by. Who rocked the house talking about taking care of elders last week. A part 2 is coming up early part of April. And also thank you to Joint Specialist for jumping in on the Periscope side. Lia, I'm going to ask you a question, and I hope you're as transparent as always on this.
I don't see how I could be different. Just who I am.
Enough said, right, Tachi? Enough said. Like, I'm the same, but yeah. Colorism in your journey.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share with our audience on that?
Yeah, of course. So I would say, being a biracial woman, but definitely perceived by society as a Black woman, it's been kind of sort of like this duality of life, whereas by the African-American community, I've been considered light-skinned, or I've been called Oreo because I speak, without ebonics most of the time. I kind of know when to turn it on and when to turn it off. It's obviously context specific, but I speak the way that I was taught to speak, which is how I talk. So I don't really know what way that is. But by my African-American peers as a child, not so much as an adult, definitely people were teasing me, oh, you want to be white, you're trying to be white, you're this, you're that. But meanwhile, in larger society, I was still treated and seen as a Black woman, despite having been biracial, and despite, the fact that my Blackness is very apparent. It's not like I'm so light-skinned that I could pass. I can't pass. I have too many, melanated features. So, and I've never wanted to, nor have I tried to.
And the earrings too.
That too. No, I didn't have these as a kid. I did not. So this is a newer, addition to the ensemble. But yeah, it's been a weird road because I kind of feel like I found more acceptance in my own identity, probably outside of the African-American community during my earlier years. And in my more adult years, I've found just comfort within, because I've gotten to know a lot more Black people as my world has grown and my scope has expanded, because I went from being in a very, very, very small upstate town where I was the only biracial person until I moved to a larger city in upstate New York where there was more diversity, but still I was the only one in my secondary school. And really my world opened up when I got to college. And though African Americans and people of color were definitely in the minority in that part of New York State and in that university, there were still, just by sheer numbers, enough of us to have our own sub community. And it was at that point that I really got to enjoy and appreciate and be exposed to the full array and rainbow of what Blackness really is. And so for me, I found myself like on the spectrum, because to me, there really is no, in my opinion, we're all Black. even though I do concede that I think darker skinned people have it harder in terms of treatment perceptions and negative stereotypes associated with skin color. But I also like to push back against that, because I think many people who tend to be darker seem to think that light skinned people have it easier. And in some ways there is light skin privilege, but we're still Black. Society sees us as Black. We're still treated as Black. We're still treated as different. So I always just kind of like to put those two out there, because I definitely agree that folks who are more melanated than I am have definitely struggled in different ways. And maybe my light skinnedness has given me some easier access. But at the same time, I'll never be seen as an equal, because they still see me as a Black woman. So that's been my experience.
No, okay. I want to shout out to Anthony. Thanks for joining in. And on Periscope, I guess Tatiana's #1 troublemaker is watching via.
Oh, my dear, my dear, my dear. Welcome.
Yes. Yes. We'll call out her name because we all know, but we'll call it Miss Natalie Cruz.
Natalie Cruz is troublemaker #1. She knows that, and she's proud. So
you gotta have one.
Yeah, you gotta have one. So
at least
I have 3, or 4.
Okay.
I'm sure.
So Tachi, how do you respond or add on to what Lia just said? And have you had any challenges or seen friends who've had challenges when it comes to the whole area of colorism within the Black environment?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The thing about upstate New York. So New York is really a dichotomy. You've got New York City and then the rest of New York. New York City is very diverse. You've got a lot of people from the Caribbean, from Africa, from Russia, from Eastern Europe. So you've got a lot of diversity. Though not everybody is living in the same neighborhood in some cases. Some cases, yes, some cases, no. You still have an exposure or a possible exposure to different types of people. And so it runs the gamut. You've got a lot of different, types of people there. Less so the case in upstate New York. And when I say upstate, getting away from Westchester County all the way going up and west. And I'm making that dichotomy for a reason, because there's a limited scope of who you're exposed to and a limited scope of worldview when you're there, particularly the farther west you get in New York State. So I was in Buffalo, which is way upstate. And Buffalo is comprised of, let's talk about the North and this whole migration. So you've got the northern migration of people, after the Civil War, etc., people who are going north because there are opportunities there. So they're leaving agrarian life, forced agrarian life, and going to another type of forced labor, in a sense, when you think about it, the factories, etc. Okay. So you still, even though you're in a new place, you still have the same mindset. You have still been taught that the closer you are to your oppressor, the more acceptable you are. And you carry those same old fangled ways into your new environment. And so I saw this where I was. Now, again, my experience is completely different. I'm a child of immigrants and we're African. So there's a different, even though there is a colorism thing there too, it's different than what happens in the United States. Colorism exists all over, wherever there are melanated people, but it's slightly different and it reads slightly different. So of course I'm dark-skinned because when you're in that situation, you don't necessarily have much else. You don't have much education. And I'm saying this as, somebody that went to school. I'm coming from a very educated background. We only moved there because my dad came there to be a professor. That was not the case with my other peers. Their parents worked in factories, etc. Nothing wrong with that. But you also then take on the mentality that you've been taught. It becomes impressed. So you don't have anything else. If you work in, your parents work in factories, this is your lot. You don't have a lot of money. What do you have that makes you special and good? I'm light-skinned. So that becomes your cash. That becomes your cowrie shell. That is the card and your currency that you play to show that you belong. That's what happens. So by that token, you use that to denigrate anybody else who is darker than a brown paper bag. the brown paper bag test. So that was my experience.
It was real, by the way. People think that's a joke, but it was real.
It was real. It was real. And it was also very real
really
that with a lot of the HBCUs, you had to submit a picture with your application.
What?
Yeah, we'll get into this in 2 weeks.
This is a whole other thing.
Yeah.
But it's a colorism thing. And like Leah was saying, it is a forced dichotomy. It's us or them. But in my experience, yeah, I absolutely saw it. And I am nowhere near light. Don't be fooled by the fact that the light is blowing me out now because I have on black. This is so not, it was fine earlier. Now it's just blowing me out. But I'm, you know, dark skinned for all intents and purposes. But, you know, unless you grow up in an area where there is a lot of diversity, where you have a lot of people like you, where, you know, you don't, I felt that pride and I was fine, but you have to have a lot of strength and a lot of support in order to be fine with yourself in a world that values fair skin over dark skin. So that was my my experience. I didn't feel okay. And this is another thing: the dark skin, light skin thing comes also with the emphasis on hair texture. It's all wrapped in. Yeah. So you'll hear things. And eye color, absolutely. So it's all wrapped into, you'll hear people say, you know, you'll see somebody that's very fair skinned, but they've got very kinky hair. And like grandmother saying that is a waste of light skin because their hair is like, yeah. So you'll hear things like that. I was safe because I've always had a lot of hair and it was always long. So you can't be dark skinned and have no hair, but you could be dark skinned and have, quote, good hair, or dark skinned and have long hair and you're still okay. So we impose all this stupidity on ourselves. By the way, it's something that wasn't necessarily started by us, but we perpetuated it, and we perpetuate it well, because now if you ask non-melanated people, they don't know the difference between our the different hair type. They don't. Exactly. It's something we have imposed and we continue on. So long-winded, but that's my experience and what I've seen.
Well, I had a feeling a young lady would be joining us.
Yay!
Hi.
And there she is. How are you, Jada?
I'm doing well. How's everyone this evening?
Good. How are you?
Fantastic.
Outstanding.
Thank you.
You have something you want to say?
Yeah. I'm sorry, Dre. I'll literally get off once I'm.
We can just take turns.
I wanted to piggyback off of what Tashi was saying. You know, I agree with that. You know, me being a dark-skinned woman as well, growing up, fortunately for me, I grew up in the northeast of the Bronx, and I went to high school in Manhattan. So there was a lot of diversity, especially in Manhattan. Where I lived in the northeast part of the Bronx, there were nothing but West Indians. So there were people that looked like me everywhere. So I went to a private school, and luckily, again, I was surrounded by people that truly did look like me in my neighborhood and everything like that, you know. And it wasn't until I went to high school where it was a lot more diverse. There were people from different all backgrounds and different walks of life and stuff like that. But that being said, I completely agree with you, just like you said. So for me, it was very safe because I was dark skinned and I was pretty for a dark skinned girl, and my hair was very long. And then they also automatically see my last name and they automatically think, oh, because you're mixed, blah, blah. And they literally, they feel like you can be considered attractive if you're not mixed with something, right. If you're not biracial, if you're not just fully Black. And it's just like, at the end of the day, I let people know and I correct them real quick. My race, I'm Black, honey. No matter what my nationality is or anything like that, as far as my background, my skin complexion, I'm Black. There's no, like, literally, I would have to educate other Black people on it too. And it's very, very strange because I've noticed the difference between being up north, where it is a lot more diverse, than being in the South, right? So the South is a whole nother ballgame as far as, and I don't like to say this, but in all actuality, I think it's because it's the lack of knowledge, right? Where I've heard a lot of ignorant comments since I moved. So I go back and forth from New York to Atlanta, but since I've been in Atlanta, I will say there's a lot of, I hear a lot of ignorant statements, right? Where people automatically just think that there is white people, black people, and just Mexicans. Like no one else is on the planet. Like it's just the craziest thing to me because I don't come from that. Again, I come from New York, where there's so many people that are from different countries, different continents. You have a mixed crowd. Like it's a mixing pot, melting pot, right? So that being said, they look at you very differently out here versus up north as well. Again, this is the South, where it wasn't too long ago where slavery was very much well and alive down here, and I had encountered my first racial experience not too long ago. I had a gun pulled out on me by a white man, and that's never happened to me. Yeah, and he called me the N-word. It was the craziest experience. And I remember I was gonna meet my husband for dinner that day. And on my way there, it happened to me. And when I tell you it was the craziest experience, I've never experienced something like that. Again, two different worlds, right? Being up north versus the South. So, but going back to what we were saying, I agree. I agree. As far as just the hair texture is very different. Being dark skinned with considerably good hair, you're considered pretty and you're safe. So, you have something kind of going for you, right? And even if you're light skinned, you're light. So it must be right. Just things of that. You hear certain things as you get older, as you grow, and you're like, and even hearing things as a child, you didn't really necessarily get, like real quick. And it's not until you get older where you're like, you put two and two together. And you're like, wait a second, that wasn't right. So little comments and things like that, they follow you. But in this country, being dark skinned is a problem. I think it's not until recent things as far as social media. I think movies being made where they're highlighting and they're making it to where they're advertising Black is beautiful. And they're embracing, our race and our culture, somewhat compared to how it was back then. So I definitely just wanted to piggyback off of what she said.
So Jada, stay on.
Go ahead.
There are a few things I want to say. First of all, I think Black Lady Magic is going to induct. I let you in the club because you got your earring game.
She did. I was already, as soon as she came with earrings, let me look at those hoops a little bit more. I really like them.
I know, right? They're gorgeous.
Into the hoops, and I was like, wait, she's saying something. I need to not look at the earrings anymore.
Well, I appreciate it.
So let me ask, from what Jada has shared with us, ladies, what feedback, what additional commentary would you like to make?
I mean, I can only add that it is true. I mean, I definitely feel like the experience that I have had being a Northerner, so to speak, and now living below the Mason-Dixon and traveling around is a little bit different. I mean, Black people are Black people, so there is some similarity, but definitely I think some of the mentalities and the approaches and sort of some of the stereotypes is a little bit different because people will see my hair and then they're like, oh, you must be mixed with something. Like most people think I'm Latina because they see the hair and they think, oh, are you Cuban? Are you Puerto Rican? Are you Dominican? And I'm like, nah, none of those things. And then eventually but you have to be mixed with something. And when I tell them, I'm like, well, I am biracial, but I'm Black. So, and I remember one time something that Jada said triggered a memory when I was basically, I think it was a freshman in college. I had gotten a scholarship from Fleet Bank, to pay like $1,000 or $2,000 or something towards my college tuition. And that came from the summer when I had interned or worked as a bank teller that year. And the clientele for that bank, that particular branch, was really old white people, primarily white women. And, I look like I look. At that time, my hair was longer because you guys know I just cut my hair off. So it's short now. It was longer. And this one white woman would come to my window every day. She would wait for me to get free because every day she would want me to remind her that I was Black because she insisted that I was not. She was like, you can't be Black. You just be. And I'm like, well, what do you mean by that? And we ended up having like these conversations, and she would come every day to like do some little transaction, like cash a little check for like $1 or something. Because I mean, she literally has nothing else to do. I mean, come on. The elderly, what you going to do? Seriously, she would come in to cash a check for $1 just so she could have an excuse to come to my window. And every day she would insist, she was like, oh no, you have to be Native American. Look at your cheekbones. Look at your this, your that. And I was like, why can't you just accept that I'm Black? Why? I'm telling you that I'm Black. Look at my skin. It's brown. Like, it's not white. I don't have, I don't know what a Native American is supposed to look like. I can't say that I don't, but I definitely don't think that I do. I just look like me. But this woman would not accept it until I literally came in with some photo that I found in my mother's attic because she basically removed all evidence of her former relationship with my biological father because it was just not a good thing for her. But she still, of course, for me, kept some stuff like packed away. I had to come in with a photo of him and a photo of her. And I was like, and this is what you get. When you cross those two, here you go. Yes. And the lady was just like, no, she just couldn't accept it. And I was just like, I didn't know what else to do with that. I was like, I literally showed you the lineage. I've told you every day I'm Black. I don't know what your problem is. Like, I just didn't know what she wasn't getting. I think she was trying to be complimentary because she was telling me that I was beautiful and telling me these nice things, but she could not associate that beauty with Blackness. So I had to be something else so that she could attribute that what her perception of beauty was to a non-Black person. And I was just trying to be like, look, I appreciate your compliments, but accept that you're giving them to a Black woman. Period. It was just weird. It was really weird. I'll never forget it because it was just so weird to me. Wow.
Just before we go further, Divine Right on YouTube is saying, my grandmother has gone through for decades with people mistaking her for Latina, which is not an issue. But she said, why can't I be a very light-skinned woman with finer hair? Don't make assumptions.
Right. Said, Serena's grandmother is light-skinned, beautiful, fair, straightish, more fine textured hair. And I can see how people could mistake her, but she's clearly a Black woman. And then she light, but she Black. She Black.
So Serena continues and says she would tell people who were making the assumption that she's Black and her mother was part white. They caught an attitude with her for some reason. They wanted her to be something she was not. Mm-hmm. Some of the people that caught attitude were her African American friends.
Oh, yes. Oh wow.
I mean, that's where I got most of my flack. When I was coming up, oh, you're an Oreo. Oh, you're trying to be white. Oh, you this, you that. I'm like, you did see my mama, right? Okay, then. So you ain't got to say no more.
Tachi, what do you got to say about that?
Well, a couple of things. I think that we don't like cognitive dissonance as humans, and we need to fit people in boxes so we understand them. There are these things called schema, which are scripts in our head, and we use them to determine how to interact with a person or situation the next time we come across it. So the whole thing of when you're little and you touch something that was hot, you put that in a category in your head of things that will hurt me so that unless you're hard-headed, you won't do that again so that you won't be in danger. So we kind of do the same thing with people. We put them in categories and boxes, and there's a big cognitive dissonance for somebody who doesn't look like what our concept of Black is, and they're telling you you're Black, and that no, but Black is this. And because we have such a narrow definition of Blackness, even amongst ourselves, that's where that comes from. Okay, that cognitive dissonance of no, Black is this, or this is this, so it has to be this way. So that's one thing. The other thing is this whole thing in terms of the South and Southern. For all intents and purposes, I do live in the South, but the part of Florida I live in is really Cuba. It's not the South. Once you get past Orlando, that's basically South Georgia, Southern, Eastern Alabama, basically. So that's a little more deep South in terms of acting than where I live now. But back in the day, this was still, South. This is still South. So I find myself, because I'm in Atlanta actually an awful lot because of production. So I find myself, one thing that we could do in terms of, the conversation piece of will this end, or what do we do about it? Is we have to be responsible for educating. So when you hear something, don't just let it go. So I remember I heard, and they didn't mean any harm by it. Somebody I was with, they were talking about, oh, my daughter has a better grade of hair. I said, there's no such thing as better grade of hair. We all have wonderful hair. So it's about that education piece of it and taking responsibility. Now, one thing I'm not going to do is sit up there and create a course for people who don't want to learn. Don't have time for it. Too damn bad. But what I will do is, if I hear you're not doing something in a maliceful way, I will take the time to correct you and let you know. I'm like, love my hair. And it's curly, but it's not a loose curl. And I love it. And I wouldn't want any other type of hair. And my hair is just as valid as anybody else's type of hair. So it's just, letting them know, because it's something that they've grown up with, the whole nonsense of good hair. They've grown up with that, and it's been ingrained in them. So it's not that they're trying to do anything bad by saying it. That's just what they know. So it's teaching and learning a different way of behaving towards our Blackness, accepting our Blackness in all its different forms, and then expressing our Blackness in different positive ways.
All right. Before we go further, I want to shout out to Cliff. Thank you, Cliff, for being on and watching the conversation. Again, thank you for last week, the way you ended off last week's conversation. That was just outstanding. Mr. Dre has a question. He's saying, why are features and skin color a factor that causes people to show their willful ignorance?
Yeah, I said I don't. I answered him in the chat, and I said I really don't know. It really baffles me. But I think it goes back to what Tachi was saying, which is a human condition. It's part of the human condition that we must categorize. And if it doesn't fit within the boxes that we have conveniently set up, there's this cognitive dissonance, and we cannot deal with or comprehend something that doesn't fit into the nice little boxes that we've set. And so I think until those boxes are destroyed, or until we come up with the fact that there is no need to classify anybody by things as meaningless as how much melanin you have or whatever grade of hair you have, we're going to continue to face that type of ignorance and those types of problems. Also, I do think there's a choice between someone who is genuinely ignorant and someone who's willfully ignorant, meaning you can know the difference. You can choose to understand. You can actually listen and comprehend what is being said to you, but you don't want to, because you would rather perpetuate these myths and these stereotypes, or because that's what you truly believe. So just own it. If that's what you really believe, then that's fine. And so I know where you are. Like in the case of that old woman who would come in every day, I knew she was just straight ignorant, but I was patient with her because I was like, she's an elder. I'm gonna just be the good person that my parents taught me to be and work with her. But if she tried to come up in here one more time, number one, to cash a $1 check, because I was about through with that. But if she comes up in here with these same questions, we will have some problems today. They're gonna have to switch me out because I can't. But I'll share another short, quick anecdote of my life, because I've told you many times on this show that I am like an anomaly. I grew up by myself, only person of color, literally in my town and in my family, because I grew up with my white mother's family. I remember one day being at my aunt's house, and I'm the oldest cousin, so maybe I was like 12, which meant all my other cousins are like between 6 and 12. And all of my aunts are white women. They're my mother's sisters. And so they started to have this conversation. I don't even know how it came up. And I remember sitting in the back of the room in the easy chair, because I always sat in my uncle's chair, which was the easy chair. And they started to have a conversation about who has the best hair in the family. Not once was my name mentioned. And then, because they were like, oh, it's Larissa, my sister, Sarah, my cousin, then, different aunts and other cousins. And then my aunt, who started the conversation, realized that nobody had said my name. She was like, oh, Leah, she was so embarrassed. And I just looked at her and I was like, And I just gave her the face, because at that age, I was like, you're my aunt. You need to know better. Of all the people who's going to be having these stupid conversations, you didn't even think to include me. And y'all know you want my hair. Y'all got that stringy, straight, boring hair. Look at this. Come on. But, she just it didn't like even occur to her to include me in that, like, until she realized that she had left me out.
May I?
And so,
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. No, I'm done.
No, may I piggyback, because that's such an interesting conversation piece where it's like, number one, they didn't mention you because white is always the default. when it comes to hair and things like that. And you can see that it's only recently that there started to be a wealth of products to deal with our hair on the market. Before, the default was not us. So you had to try, and that's where the kitchen chemists came into play, trying to mix things up to do our hair. And then they said, oh, well, they want something different. So now everybody's trying to, too late, Kinky Curly and all of them had it first, sit down. So that's one thing. But, the whole thing is, I think we also do this to ourselves, because when you talked about type of hair and the, hair typing, we've also now discovered this whole hair typing system from 1 to 4C. And so now we've done this to ourselves, where we've made the more acceptable types of hair to be closer to the spectrum of 1, which is wavy. So 1 is more of a wave, a straight wavy, and then all the way down to 4C. And to be honest, a lot of us have different textures of hair. Like I have 3 different textures in my head. No mixture.
I was like, depending on the part of your head, it's different.
Exactly. I'm not mixed with anything. I am black for centuries and centuries, but I still have different types of hair. So I think we've also done this to ourselves by continuing to perpetuate these divisions in terms of making now a hair typing system, which I guess was done for educational purposes, but has now been used as another way to separate us. And then to add to that again, even within our own, when we look at the hair products, different hair products, when you look at ads for products for natural hair, whether it's kinky, curly, whatever, more often than not, you're going to get someone that is representing the product with Lia's type of hair rather than mine. Mine is curly, but a tighter curl than Lia. So I don't, for the stylist, it may be easier or whatever the case may be. But what you're done then, again, is separated between Black women with curlier texture of hair or kinkier texture of hair, and said, well, this is not for you. So this is another division and another reason that darker women are going to be salty, because yet again, you found another way to, not only was a skin color thing, now you got the hair and you told me I'm 4C, and now this product doesn't work for me. The products that will work on Lia, which is fine because Lia's hair is gorgeous, but the products that work on her hair will not work on mine probably. So we just continue with the divisions, and this is not something that they have done. This is us.
Exactly. And I just want to add one last little thing to that. The other thing that's so funny too is, so in response to potential saltiness over the whole 4C categorization and products, and having women, like with my hair texture, advertising for products that probably they can never actually use in their hair because it's not right for their hair, to appease people, they'll trot out somebody like a Gabrielle Union. So she's darker, she's more melanated, so women who are of a darker complexion can relate to her. But Gabrielle Union's hair is also not kinky. She has a lot of long hair, but her hair is more straight, wavy. And because she's always been proud of like the fact that she's had long hair throughout her career. And I think it is so funny because it's like the okie doke. They're trying to trick you by showing you someone who's a darker skin, but meanwhile, she still has a different hair texture that, is not necessarily one that is common. Like it's unique because maybe, it just is different. So I kind of feel like that's another trick that a lot of these companies do, is they'll bring out somebody like, Gabrielle Union, or I can't remember her name right now. The girl from Scandal.
Kerry Washington.
They'll bring out somebody like Kerry Washington too, who also has a similar hair texture to Gabrielle Union, but is darker, more darkly hued, to be sort of like a trick. So like, don't be upset, dark skinned girls. Look who we have here in our ad campaign. But it's a trick.
Okay, just so two things we got to do. First of all, I'm going to go to YouTube because I see some conversation. Then Jada's going to come in because Jada's just
she is feeling
like she wants to get in. So let me just catch up here. Okay, so Divine Right says, agree with Tachi about hair. My grandmother will still break down lineage and her hair. She said it's amazing at her age of 94 that people are still talking about you have better hair. I got it from everybody. Even at 50 years old, I still get, what are you? Black? Where were you from? Where did you get the name Dango from? From my mother and father, she says. And then Divine Right says, please, we had Dax, Ultra Sheen, Blue Magic for years. LOL. Years later, pink moisturizer.
Yeah,
She also
exactly.
says, I have to buy travel size or samples of hair products before buying a full size because you said, Tachi, I can't rock all of these products because they're crazy hair types 4A, 4B, etc. So this is telling me that I have to host a conversation about hair types.
Yes, please.
Yes, that is a whole
Yes,
rabbit hole.
please.
Okay, so I will put that on one of our Wednesday conversations.
Yeah,
Black-
hair. Woo, that's gonna be that might be a multi-parter because
Okay.
black
Okay,
hair.
Jada, come off of mute. You're on mute.
You're muted.
You're still muted, Jada.
Still muted.
You're still muted, Jada. Oh gosh, because I'm going. She's like so on get vocal. You're
There's a little microphone at the bottom of your screen.
On your box, Jada, and there should be
a little microphone. Click it.
Uh-oh. She can't see it.
You know what? Go out and come back in. You may have to just reset.
Yeah, go out and come back in because she's getting so into
she's
going.
definitely feeling this is what we're saying.
What's up, so Steph?
Can you guys hear me now?
Jada,
There you
yes,
go.
Jada.
Okay, I had to reset. That's what it was.
Okay, Jada, I know you got a lot to say because we've been seeing your body language for the last 5 minutes.
I'm sorry.
So bring it, girl.
So I'm sorry. I think you know what it is. I'm really passionate about hair as a Black woman because I did 2 big chops and I noticed how much people act when it comes to hair. I didn't realize that growing up because I always had the long hair for a Black female. I always had the good hair, what people would call it. And I would feed into it as a young child as well. It wasn't until I educated myself when I decided to go back being natural because as a young girl, my mom would perm my hair. And again, I think because she adapted a lot of American ways. So she didn't know any better, right? And so that being said, that was like the thing to do. Not to say that I needed it, but that was the thing to do. And it wasn't until my hair no longer naturally got curly, that's when I was like, oh, you know what? Because I was straightening it so much, I was like, oh, I'm just doing a big chop. I'm impatient. I don't want to just transition. And it wasn't until I did a lot of research where I noticed like how much, again, in our own society, how much we harp on good hair, bad hair, how important hair is to a Black female and how they view you. A lot of people would give me, they would give me compliments, but then it would be like, well, see, you have that good hair, so I can't do what you did. I can't chop my hair off like that. And I would be like, no. And I would have to literally, I have to check them. I would be like, no, your hair is just as good as mine. It's just different. As long as it's healthy hair, it is good hair. And then just even watching the documentary that Chris Rock did because of his daughters, I think every female and every Black male should watch that because it allows you to look at hair from another perspective, right? And to just know that we're putting all these chemicals and stuff like that to do what? To change what we naturally have in order to look more like white people? No. Or are you more of a European style? No. You know, I feel like as long as we continue to educate, and then just like Tachi said, where it's like brands now, because perms, I forgot last year how much they dropped from like 2015 up until now, how much the perm companies have dropped in sales because all of the natural girls are just up and coming, where they're like, no, I'm proud to have this type of hair. I'm proud of this because we're embracing what we naturally have. Our hair is the only hair that grows up to the sun. Like, we need to be able to be proud of that. You know what I mean? Like, get out of here. And again, hair is extremely sensitive for Black women for so many different reasons, and because of the, because it, being kinky, having kinky hair and being thick and all this stuff. And it's just like, but that's okay. And I think because back in the day, it was such a negative thing to say about hair, right? Where you would have to put the pencil in and do the test, right? Where it's like, oh, if it falls out, then you're good. You're good. If it doesn't, your hair is bad. We can't have that. And again, it's just about educating ourselves and embracing what we have naturally. It's okay to have our hair. And I think as long as we just know that, we'll hopefully be okay. Because, and again, I think it is where it's us. It's as Black people, we do it to ourselves, where it's like we start pointing fingers. That person looks like that. That person looks like this. It's like, no, just because you're different, just because you're a different shade than me, we're all Black, we're all beautiful. And we need to be able to embrace that and be okay with that. I just like, when we started talking about hair, I just, in my mind, I just kind of went crazy, because I was just like, oh no. Because I've heard it so many different times, like just comments about hair. And I will say, people do treat you differently. I will say, when my hair is curly, there's a different type of look that it gives me. Obviously, right? Because it's different. And when my hair is straightened, it's a different type of look, and people treat me differently. And I think that's crazy. It's like I'm the same person, just with two different looks. People treat you differently. And I didn't realize that.
I've had the same experience.
So Jada, when you're not talking, put yourself on mute.
Okay.
Okay, good. So a few things. We're at the top of the hour. Lia, you said before you need to jump.
I do.
So
I need to go around 10. I do. I'm sorry.
Okay, so no problem. So final comments and where people can reach you, I want from you.
Sure.
I'm wondering, so next week, we have a scheduled conversation next week, but I think we should push it back and get more into the blacks and hair conversation, because this seems to be quite intense. And plus, I can contribute too, even though I don't have no firm, but I can certainly talk about the reactions I get as a bald-headed Black man, and the whole thing about dreads,
yes,
the whole 9 yards. So I think what we'll do is we'll end the recording, but we'll continue the conversation. But next week, we have something scheduled next week about the importance of culture. We're going to push that back.
Absolutely.
We're going to push that back and talk and have next week's conversation at 9 p.m. Eastern Time about blacks and hair.
Okay.
So just for the people,
I hope you know what you get yourself into, friend.
Well, like I said, I'm bald, so I think I'm somewhat safe. So that's all right. Right. But I think that just from the energy I'm getting from this conversation, it needs to happen. And I know that it's going to be quite interesting, because some of the stories you're telling me, I'm just going, I know about some of them, but some I'm just I'm shaking my head.
Yeah.
I'm just really shaking my head. So what we'll do is we'll end off here recording wise. So Lia, final comments, and then you can sign up.
All right. So trying to move back away from the hair conversation, because I'm fully sucked into that. Especially when people start talking about locks, because I don't like people to talk badly about locks, because I am a long time, lock wearer. I wore locks for almost 12 years of my adult life. But anyway, I'll save that for next week. Because I think locks get a bad rap. Anywho, so going back to colorism, though, I just think at the end of the day, like Jada has said, like Tachi said, like I said at the beginning, there is no one definition of what Black is. There is, we really truly are the most diverse spectrum in terms of color. And I feel like we're doing ourselves a disservice, and we're keeping ourselves back if we continue to perpetuate, me too, Jada, if we continue to perpetuate this division, this divide between light skin and dark skin, because I'm like, we're already marginalized by larger society. So why do we continue to do it to ourselves? Our main strength lies in our ability to come together. That is when any real change will take place. But if we continue to be broken apart by these little meaningless things, like the texture of somebody's hair, if they have blue eyes, if they don't, if they're dark skinned, if they have good hair, bad hair, whatever that even means. To me, it weakens us as a people, and it diminishes our power. And we're doing it to ourselves, because I don't see, like my daughter, she's like me, she's light, she has my hair. I don't see other Black people really bothering my daughter about her braids, because I keep her hair in cornrows, and she has long, beautiful hair. But it's a lot of larger society, white friends and white classmates' parents, who are always asking me, oh, did you add stuff to her hair? Like she had to have extensions in order to have braids that are down her back. And I'm like, no, that's her hair. And I feel like that shows progress, because a few years ago, it was kind of the reverse. Like white people didn't seem to really know or understand like just how fabulous Black hair, the Black hair industry is. And so they just took on face value, you know, if my daughter had long braids, that they just assumed that that was her hair, and it was Black people who were questioning, oh, is that all her hair or not? But again, to me, really, that doesn't matter. None of that stuff matters. There's so many larger issues that we have to deal with and reconcile as a people that we need to let go of this stuff. That's the past. That's not where we are anymore. And I feel like there's this resurgence now of embracing Blackness of all shapes and sizes, not just about color, but also, like Jada was saying earlier, being thick or fit thick, slim thick, being heavy, you know, being curvy. There's a lot of that too, that I think there's like fat shaming and all these things, and we just do it to ourselves. We're too judgmental. And I think until we can let that stuff go, we're still enslaved.
Okay.
So
where can people contact with you?
So people can find me basically at Lia World Traveler, LIA World Traveler, across the internet. You can find me on my blog. You can find me Facebook, Instagram, Lia World Traveler. And on Twitter, I'm Lia World Travels. Before I jump out, I will drop all my stuff in the comment box, and then maybe Dr. Vibe can share this out somewhere else.
Yep. Well, and also too, you and I still have a conversation.
Yeah, I tried. I was in the room, but we will.
No problem.
Yeah.
If we can do it sometime by weekend, I definitely want to have a conversation, because I've got a number of things twirling in my head that I want to share with you that I think they can move things even more forward.
All right. No problem. I'm going to stay in the room until I finish typing all this stuff, and then I'll jump out. But thank you again for the opportunity. This topic is important, and it's one that I think we need to continue to talk about, because if we don't, we're going to just continue to maintain the status quo. And I want more, and I want more for our people. So.
All right. Jada, if you can unmute yourself, final comments and where people can reach you. There we go.
She looked like she's frozen.
Oh, I think she's frozen.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah.
Okay. No problem. Tachi?
So I think my final thoughts, I think we have to stop letting ignorant people lead the discourse in terms of how we feel about each other and how we view each other. Those of us that are melanated. I am tired of hearing somebody like a Lil Wayne who says something about whatever, and that becomes the order of the day. Somebody says that doesn't think Black women are attractive, and that becomes the order of the day. Stop letting these daft, aren't worth two flies smashed idiots lead the conversation on how we feel about each other. There are enough of us that are woke and that are evolved that should be leading these conversations, but unfortunately the idiots have the loudest voices in this. So to me, that's my final thought, that I think a lot of what we feel is because we're letting the wrong fools lead the conversation. So we need to take that conversation back. So if you'd like to reach me, so Dr. Vibe will get on me if I don't talk about this, every Wednesday on Facebook Live and Periscope, and also Instagram Live, I do Mediascope, where I talk all about media, tech, and pop culture. On Instagram, I am Dr. Tachi. So Dr_TACHI, and you can watch the pre-show there. On Periscope /Twitter, I am at Tachiada, TACHIADA. And if you want to watch Mediascope at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Pacific on Facebook, you can go to at Mediascope16. I am also one half of the TV Twins on the TV Channeling podcast, which is on every single major podcasting app. We also, both shows, Mediascope, and you could go to tvchanneling.com. Both shows, Mediascope and TV Channeling, are on WJMSradio.com. TV Channeling is Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, and also on Friday. And then Mediascope is on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, and also on Friday, because they do replays now. So that's how you can reach me.
Nice.
Syndication.
Yay.
Miss Jada, any final words and comments?
Yes. I just wanted to let it be known that to piggyback off of what both of the ladies, Tashi and Lia, said, I think we definitely do ourselves and our culture a disservice when we are literally perpetuating all the stuff that I think was brainwashed towards us, as far as like the media and showing what their type of beautiful is. And we adapted that lifestyle as far as thinking that we weren't enough and we're not beautiful. And the way we look isn't good enough. Our skin complexion, the way our lips look, our hips are, naturally. So I think once we start embracing these things about us, our skin complexion, our hair, our figures, and embracing it and wholeheartedly loving it, loving every inch of us, then I think we are able to move along and definitely stop separating us as a society. My name is Jada Lopez on all social media. You guys can reach me at Jada Lopez, spelled JAIDALOPEZ, on all platforms. It's everywhere exactly the same. JAIDALOPEZ. Thank you, Dr. Vibe, for.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for adding positive value to the conversation. And we're looking forward to having you join us next week, because I know you're passionate about that subject.
Yeah. And I think you should probably talk about, because this doesn't go with what I talk about, but I think also there was something that I said that just literally triggered my memory as well when it comes to how we view ourselves. I just had a brain like freeze, but there was something that I said that made me think of another topic that I think that it would be really, really good. Once I remember, I'll let you know.
No problem. I appreciate anything that I can host epic conversations with. We will do. So I'm going to close it off with a few things. The first things first, I'm going to say thank you to Brad, to Badges, to Shannon, to Cliff, to Dre, to come back here, to you Sight for You too, to Divine Right. Next up, Divine Right has some comments saying, yes, it's a whole subject in itself. I think it's the hair thing she's talking about. There are YouTube channels that are specifically talk about hair products. They test it out on their hair and do reviews. That's another way to find products just nuts. I love this segment on the Black Star album a few years ago that had two guys talking about good hair. It's a wake-up call to brothers when it comes to our natural hair. I think it's called Brown Skin Lady. You Foresight 2 says, I would like to ask a different. Does hair make a woman or vice versa? The woman is alive. Okay, well, that's all going to come next week, because I see the hair thing has got its own thing going on here, and I don't even want to go any further, because that means we're going to be on for the next 5 hours. Save your energy, store up your energy for next Wednesday, please and thank you. Also on the Periscope size, we had Natalie Crew, we had Peace 2 for Love, we also had I Can Do Dave from Australia chiming in. I'm going to say thank you so much. This conversation went totally different than I thought it was, but that's what makes it epic, because it now is creating more conversations. So we may come back to the color fight at a later date, but next week it's the hair fight. So next week it's all about the hair. So I'm going to make it fairly short and sweet. It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, 2018 Innovation Award winner by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. If you want to touch base with me, the best way is go to my website, thedrvibeshow.com. I can give you a long list of things and catch you saying, hey, how come you make me do it and I don't do it? Because I have to do it so much more than you. That's why. Just joking. That's the best way to get in touch with me. I will tell you that coming up tomorrow night, which is March 14th at 7 p.m., I have scheduled to have two ladies talking about the spelling bee of Canada. And then at 9 o'clock, there's a certain lady named Dr. Tachi that's going to be on. And she is going to be chatting about, many of you may not have realized this, but just a few days ago, it was the 30th anniversary of the World Wide Web.
Yes.
And Tachi is going to come on and talk about the digital divide still exists after 30 years. So she is going to rock with that conversation. And then next Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, I'm hosting a conversation with a gentleman who's the lead of an organization called Men and Masculinity. And we're going to be talking about how are men handling Me Too?
That should be interesting.
Yes. So if you're not following me on Get Vocal, please, all the conversations are listed there. I like to say the last few things. Uh, live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Next up, sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger. Block assumptions. And I always have to wait for the last part to put. You know what? I'm not even going to say my last part because it's not going to come up here. But I'd like to say thank you very much. God bless. Peace you well. If you want to stay on for a bit of after show, you can, but the recording is going to stop. Actually, I'm going to say my last part. It just came up, so I feel bad if I don't say it because it's part of my thing. So I'm just waiting for it to come up, folks. Be patient. All right, here we go. Sorry for the delay, but I have to say it. It's part of the brand. Come on. Like I say, aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. Thanks so much, and thanks for making another epic conversation. God bless, peace be well, and keep the faith.
Stop crying.